So we left with the four elders sitting on the marble bench in what? In which museum?
This is in Washington, D.C. I can't remember if I actually met them at the Smithsonian to begin with or at our hotel. I think it was probably at our hotel, but it was very regal. It was right down by the mall somewhere. Um, it was fancy digs, and that night I just remember it was very kind of a romantic night. I came into there were 4 or 5 people on the bench. There was somebody I didn't know, a young woman, um, but others that I met from before. And I think Narcissus and Martin were there. I think, and on that bench. And I think it was one of the two of them that was like, you know, oh, you came all the way from Harvard? Like what are you doing here? You know? Like I thought you were with Harvard. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's where I explained it, right there at that bench.
Hmm. Ah, they still didn't know
They didn't know.
the whole time?
No.
Oh my goodness.
They still thought I was from Harvard.
Wow.
Um so yeah, I think one of the guys was Narcissus because at that point we rented a limousine. And I was in the limousine, I know, with Narcissus and Alvine, his wife, and the young woman who was Margaret Cropbeard Wolf, the one who I didn't know, the new player in the group. And we drove around Washington D.C. that night and looked at all the cool sites. Like we were like, to the limo driver, take us to the Lincoln Memorial, take us to this, take us to that. We just went to all the cool sites and looked at them with the night light shining on them and all that stuff. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah.
it was our opportunity. Really, like we weren't gonna have time. We were gonna go see the museum the next day, and then we were gonna be off to New York. So it was that night to see Washington D.C. For that, I'd already been there, but um, it was a different kind of visit, and so it was fun. I toured that night with Narcissus and Alvine and Margaret, and went around to those uh, all around Washington D.C. and had fun. Um, and then the next day, we went to the Smithsonian, and the Smithsonian security is the highest order. Like I was in military intelligence. I was a signals intelligence analyst in the U.S. Army in 98 Charlie. Um, I worked top secret missions and stuff, and like the areas that I worked were not nearly as protected as the Smithsonian's
Hmm.
museum storage. So to get into the Smithsonian's museum storage, what you have to do is go right down to the mall to the Smith. You have to have it set up beforehand, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, but when the time has come and you want to, and your day is there and your appointment's there, and you're going to go into storage in the Smithsonian, you go down to the mall to the appropriate museum. Mine was the Natural History Museum. And um, you give them your passport and driver's license. And in exchange for that, they give you a identification card that lets you onto a bus.
Hmm.
That bus drives you out of Washington, D.C. into Maryland to a storage facility that is just, it looks like I've seen lots of maximum security prisons in my life across the country. It looks like a maximum security prison. It's all razor wire, you know, double set perimeter, and you go through a gate. The van driver takes you through a gate. You pull up to the facility, and when you go in the doors, you exchange your badge that they gave you at the museum for a badge at the storage place, and you fill out some paperwork about yourself, just basic stuff, you know. They've already set this up, and you basically, you're just signing in, you're taking a badge and all this, and then they assign you an escort. And so for each member of our party, there was a Smithsonian escort to go through the facilities with us.
Wow.
And it's massive. Hey, their facility is massive. Yeah, they've got a lot of stuff. And I've been at the new facility next door to that now as well, which is the new facility for the American Museum the National Museum of the American Indian, which is a newer complex, even more high tech, but all the security stuff is the same. Hey, you have to really go through your shit. Yeah, so and then we went through the Smithsonian. We videotaped it. Or wait, was that the time? No, we didn't videotape that time. Sketch that. I went back to the Smithsonian later and videotaped it with Alan and Chris. That time, what happened was the very first thing, like Joyce had sent me there to take photographs of everything in the collections, and to take notes of everything, you know, that they were saying about the collections and all that stuff to document the whole thing, right?
Right.
So I took out my camera right away and started getting set up. And Martin, my future father-in-law, said to me, "Oh, I hope this isn't going to end up in the National or the National Geographic." I think that's what he said. "I hope this isn't going to end up in the National Geographic." And then I was like, "Well, I don't got to take photographs if you don't want." And I put it away, and that seemed to buy me something, you know.
Yes.
With Martin, maybe with others too.
Yeah.
The rest of the day, we looked at the whole collection. I took lots of notes and everything of what they were talking about, what they were saying, and all of this.
But clearly there was a concern about using the camera.
There was a concern about
And
using
it's
the
an
camera.
important concern that is easy to overlook because the way we live today.
Yep.
Right. It's a very important concern. I'm with you.
Yeah. There was a concern about the camera. There were parts of the day where people broke down. They were crying. I ended up consoling the young woman, and we started getting along better through that day. by the end of the day, we were on a plane trip to New York with our Smithsonian notes in hand. And me and her were getting along really well. We were going to stay in what is this place that they had booked us? Like somebody in tribal government had booked us this ratty ass place in New York City. They didn't know what they were doing, you know. And the place that they booked us, we cabbed to, and it was just like gross, and it was like
Squalor.
yeah, shared bedroom, shared washroom, like shared washrooms between like 4 people in 2 bedrooms kind of things. And me and this girl were like, oh, we'll stay together. And we ended up like choosing to stay in a room. But then Francis First Charger was there. Yeah, now I remember he was there too. And he was like, no, we're not staying in this place, right? He got a hold of us. He's like, no, we're not staying here. We're getting out of here. We're gonna have a meeting with Sumitomo Corporation downtown tomorrow, but they have set us up with rooms in Penn Station. They were Pennsylvania Hotel, which is right above Penn Station. They're expensive, but we just got to make it work, right? So we taxied over to Pennsylvania Hotel, and then again, like me and Margaret were like, oh, we'll just room together and split the costs. And if I remember Frank like intervening and being like hey, I can give you money for another room, an extra room. And we're like, nah, we'll just make it work, and so we ended up rooming together in Pennsylvania Hotel. We stayed there. I think in New York we were there 3 nights, maybe 4 nights, 3 or 4 nights. So we were in the American Museum of Natural History, as well as the High Foundation, which was down on Battery Park, like where you can see like the Statue of Liberty and that kind of thing. There was a big museum for American Indians called the High Foundation. And then that was moved, all that collection. Well, the storage for that was in Brooklyn, but they moved all that collection eventually to Washington, D.C. to start the National Museum of the American Indian. But back then in 1996, it was still in New York. That's where we visited it first. Okay. So we were there 3 or 4 days, and we saw a lot of things. And in terms of my life, the things that were pretty momentous in New York was both Alan and Martin confronted me one day and told me, you're working with us on bringing these bundles home, and you should probably get more involved in our ceremonies so you learn more about them. And so both of them invited me to their ceremonies. Alan invited me to his, I think it was, he had a thunder pipe still at the time. He had the Beaver Bundle too now, but it was new to him.
Mm.
I didn't get to see his Beaver Bundle quite yet. But I think he invited me to his Thunder Pipe and Martin too. And so I don't know. I continued the tour, but for me, I think the most momentous thing was probably just those invites. Hey,
Mm.
you know, um, and then having
When did those ceremonies take place that they invited you to?
that would have been in the summer of that would probably been June-ish in 1996.
What I mean is, did they take place after you went home
Home.
back to? Oh, right. You're actually living on the East Coast, aren't you? Yeah.
I
Sorry.
was living in Boston at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, of course. Yeah. So where did those ceremonies take place?
In Alberta
When? Later?
in June of 1996.
And how long after the trip?
Really shortly, like weeks after.
I see. Okay. I'm just trying to hold the timeline in my head.
Yeah, no, it was very quick. Like I did the first repatriation in May, they came,
Hmm.
and then by June I was with them on this tour, and by the end of the month I was in ceremony in Alberta.
Mm. And were you
And
visiting Alberta?
yeah, I was staying. Well, I was visiting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was by June I was there for Martin. By the end of June I was there for Martin and Alan's ceremonies. And then I was invited back by Mart. Like that trip that I came out, I think I stayed a couple of weeks, and I didn't even book anywhere to come, like anywhere to stay or anything. I
Mm.
just I just came, and Alan set up a teepee for me. I stayed a couple of days at Alan's place,
Ah.
and then Martin set up a teepee for me, and I was going to be working, like entering my stuff from my database into the Blood Tribes system, and so that was closer to Martin's, and so I started staying at Martin's, and
Had
he
you
said
spent had you spent any time in a teepee before?
no.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I lived in a teepee for those 2 weeks.
Ah.
First at Allen's and then at Martin's. And then Martin invited me back for Aquagots in the Sundance that summer. So I came back, and I was back probably another couple, 2, 3 weeks. And so I got to experience my first Sundance. And while I was there, well, that wasn't even the Sundance trip. I'm sorry. That was the first trip when I came to the Thunder Pipes
Mhm.
in the end of June. Um, there was a day when I was working at Blood at the Shot Both Sides building in Standoff at the Blood Tribe headquarters, entering my stuff in their database. And Frank came to the building, and he asked if he could take me to lunch in Fort McLeod. And so I told him, yeah. So I jumped in his truck, and he took me to lunch in Fort McLeod. But the whole thing was he was wanting to go after the thunder pipe that we had seen in the Smithsonian
Ah.
in Washington, D.C.
Mm.
And he wanted to go in after that as a vow to try to, like, he had crippling arthritis like Mahoney, you know.
Mm.
He wanted to go after it to like try to help his arthritis. And he wanted to go after it different. He said, I don't want to use that law. He said, I want to use transfer.
Hmm.
He said, I believe that the elders in the past that gave the bundles to the museums did so to ensure that the bundles would be here, for other generations to use. But when they when they did it, um, you know, however, there's some stuff that we have documented where we know they transferred it, to the museum person.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other cases where it was just straight out bought. And Frank was like, however the Smithsonian got to this bundle, because we didn't really know, hey, with that one. He's like, however they got to this bundle, he's like, I still consider the Smithsonian the current caretaker owner, and I want to approach them like from my way, with our kind of respect. I want them to transfer to me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they don't know the ceremony. I'll have an elder there to do the transfer, but I want their representatives there to transfer it to me.
Yes.
And I'm going to pay them like I would pay for a transfer of this bundle. And they know what the purpose is. And I'm going to explain to them how this bundle came about, how transfer works. You're going to do that for me. You're going to write that for me. And so that was my next mission, was to write Frank's repatriation, which was not like no other repatriation. It was a transfer request. Like we wrote it like as if I'm going, because with those particular bundles, even, you don't go and ask for it yourself. You have a mediator go for you. And we did it just like that. Hey. And the Smithsonian said that was the best repatriation request they'd ever received. And hastily made the bundle come home,
Wow.
Yeah. But it didn't come home before I came back for the Sundance. I was back for the Sundance before that bundle came home. So I was there for those couple of pipe ceremonies, and then Martin asked me to come back for the Sundance, which was mind-blowing because, if you're from the modern world, like I came in, I flew into Great Falls and he picked me up there. And even coming from, the East Coast, the city, when you fly into Great Falls, all you hear is the wind, and it's so different. It's such a different kind of quiet that you don't know. And then Martin drove me, up into Alberta, picked me up in Great Falls, drove me up into a giant camp. And it was nighttime when we got in. A giant camp of, fire glowing teepees. like I don't know, like it was like taking a time machine or something. Like people were riding horses around camp and singing, and it's crazy. It's so different, And yeah, so I had the Sundance, went to spent time at the Sundance, by that time, I was still kind of messing around with that crop-eared wolf girl,
Hmm.
but I was also kind of checking out Martin's daughter
Hmm.
and started talking to her a little, one of Martin's daughters. And and then I went back to Boston again. Um, what did I work on at that point? What was the next repatriation? I think that's when the Hoopa contacted me and wanted me to start talking to me about negotiating with them for Harvard,
Hmm.
because the Hoopa from California had been really trying to get their ceremonial things back from Harvard for a couple of years at least, and just was just getting shut down.
Hmm.
And they heard that somebody got something out of there. They're like, "Can we hire you? We've got this anthropologist um, who has worked with us since the 70s, who'll help you. You know,
Hmm.
she lives in New York City. You can stay with her. She's got a giant Hoopa library. You know,
Ah.
so I took a contract with the Hoopa. Um, and then Martin invited me before I went to the Hoopa or to New York City. I was still in Boston, but Martin had invited me to a Ganotsis, a winter ceremony. And so I flew back out to Alberta to do the Ganotsis. And when that at that point, like I couldn't stay in a teepee, it was winter.
Hmm.
So I stayed at Martin's house. And he gave me a truck to use. And he said, but I need you to, while you're staying here, you can use this truck, but I need you to drive Danielle around. You know, she has to go to college every day. But it wasn't just like I'd take her to college, drop her off, and bring her back home at the end of the day and stuff. But then in the evening, you know, if anything wasn't particularly happened, Martin would be like, "Hey, maybe you should take the truck and Danielle and go into town and go see a movie or something," you know? Like
Hmm.
he was just encouraging us to be around each other, it seemed to me.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing led to another.
Hmm.
And then um I was supposed to be going home. I was supposed to be going to Boston and then going to New York. My flight was a particular day, and Martin was supposed to bring me down to Great Falls to set me off.
Hmm.
As we headed down, he started going down the back roads of the blood reserve. Um, I never realized it, but we never got off the blood reserve.
Hmm.
Like I know it now, but he was just driving. He was just stalling, driving around the back roads until my flight was. I'm gonna be late for my flight.
Ah.
And then you know, I'm like, I'm not gonna. We haven't even crossed the border. I'm not gonna make it. He's like, oh yeah. Well, you should reschedule your flight. Let's go to the lake and check out this. There's this place where there's supposed to be these human footprints from like 10,000 years ago. You know, let's go check those out. So we went to go like explore and have fun and stuff. But
Hmm.
basically, I missed my flight, and I rebook my flight for like another week or something, an extra week. But that bought me time, because Danielle and I had just kind of got found out by her parents and by Martin and Pam that we were hanging out a little more than just driving her to school and stuff and whatever. And so I think Martin bought me some more time with her, basically, I don't know. But anyway, I ended up staying there some more, even though I was supposed to go. And then when I went, then I just sent Danielle a ticket to follow me. And I brought her to New York with me. And we subsequently eloped. And I started working the Hoopa case, which is a whole nother story. I don't know. Do we want to get into that part, or what do you want to do? Or do you have questions or about any? Like, I continued to do from there. Like, I just went into a repatriation. Like, eventually, I get to the meteorites and all that shit too. But I continued to work Blackfoot repatriations. But I started. The Hoopa contacted me, let me know that maybe I can use what I'm doing to help like other people and to make a living. Because I've been heretofore like doing all my repatriation stuff for the Blackfoot just on my own dime, just for the experience. And then the Hoopa contracted me. I thought, oh, well, one thing that I've got a database of more than 4,000 worldwide museums that have native collections, Maybe another tribe would want me to recontact those museums and ask for their inventories,
Right.
So I started pitching that around. Eventually I got a bite on that from the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde in Oregon, where I grew up, the Kalapuya mostly. But yeah, before that, I was in New York. I lived in New York City on City Island for I think Mahoney and I were there like 4 months, something like that. The first part of the project, we went to Harvard to go look at the collection. Okay. And I went with the Hoopas. Well, the whole thing, like I worked with her her name was Lee Davis. She's a famous anthropologist.
Wow.
She's from your area. She's at Berkeley, or her last place of employment was at Berkeley that I knew of. But like after she worked with me, she went to Berkeley again. She'd been there before. But so she was with me the whole time, but me and her ended up not getting along very well at all. Me and Lee. Yeah. I'd have rather just do my own contract and not have to be in any kind of thing with Lee. But it was interesting. We went to Harvard first, and we were this was even before Mahoney got there. Okay, before Danielle, before I flew her there. When I first got there, our first step was we got to go look at the collection. So we went to Harvard, and going through the collection, an event happened. We were pulling, like, the way that we had it working was we were trying to photograph everything so we could take the photographs and bring them back to California to the Hoopa elders and share the photographs with them, and then get them talking about the things, you know. So I could write my claim. And when we were going through the stacks at the Peabody, Anne Marie was with me again, Anne Marie Victor Howe, and she would actually, like, take the item from the drawer. She might have to climb a ladder. A lot of things are up high and shit. She takes an item from a drawer and she passes it down to Lee. And Lee would read out the tag number on it and description and give it to me. And I had a clipboard that I would check off the items, so I knew we got each item on the inventory. Okay. And when she passed it to me, I'd take the item, and I had a cart. Okay. And I put it on the cart, and we were going to wheel that into another room with better lighting and take photographs. So as we're going through the storage, Emery picks up this thing from a drawer up high in a ladder and hands it down. And Lee Davis says, "Stone pipe 98127," whatever the fuck the number was, you know. Stone pipe, and hands it to me. And as I'm like less than a second from touching it, I can see that this is not a smoking pipe, but this is a stone pipe, but it's a bored through.
Yeah.
This is something that doctors used to suck sickness out of people with. And that recognition hit my mind just as I touched it. And then it was like electricity went through my body, and I started blacking out. And it took everything, like all the concentration that I had to put that thing on the cart and let go of it before blacking out. And I didn't black out, but wait.
Okay. 1 minute.
I got violently sick. Sick. Okay, we'll go to the next.
But, yeah. 1 minute.